tell you this week. And I just All right, I'm going to give you about 2 more minutes. Everybody got the pictures they need to get? Because once we start, we're going to ask no more photography for the rest of the service. And now that you use your cell phones, make sure you turn them off again. Let's give one more round of applause for this group. Leonardo da Vinci was a famous painter during the Renaissance era. He was born in Vinci, Italy, in 1452. While he has a collection of beautiful paintings, one of his most famous paintings is The Last Supper. In 1494, when Leonardo was 42 years old, he was hired by the Duke of Milan to decorate the dining room of the convent church, which was the favorite shrine of the Duke's young bride. For the dining room's theme, Da Vinci appropriately chose the theme, The Last Supper. However, instead of doing the reproduction of the original scene as it would have taken place in first century Palestine, Da Vinci chose to reproduce the scene as if it had taken place in 15th century Italy, using what he considered the most dramatic moment in the story of the Last Supper. And that is the moment when Jesus reveals to the apostles that one of them will betray him. And this living dramatization reset to our modern time and language, we're going to get a glimpse of the feelings and the thoughts that the apostles might have been having that night after Jesus speaks the ominous words, "Surely one of you will betray me." So without any further ado, we present to you the living dramatization of The Last Supper, originally written by Ernest K. Emmeron and adapted for this setting.
On the day when the Passover lamb was sacrificed each year, the disciples said to me, "Where do you want us to make preparation for the Passover meal?" I said to 2 of them, "Go into the city where you'll find a man walking with the jar. Follow him. And when you enter the house, say to the owner of that house, the teacher is asking about a room where he can eat the Passover meal with his disciples. The owner will show you a large upstairs room, already furnished. Make your preparations there. The two disciples went into the city, found everything just as I had described, and got things together for the meal. Later that night, when we'd all arrived, we were eating. I said to the disciples, "You should know, one of you will betray me. One of you who is eating with me now." And then I could tell, suddenly, deeply troubled, they began to say to me one by one, "It's not me, is it?"
My name is James. It's a common name. Some call me James the Little or James the Lesser because I'm smaller than the other Jameses. My dad's name was Alphaeus, so I'm often known as James, the son of Alphaeus. I'll never forget the first time I ever saw Jesus. I was walking down the road close to where John was baptizing. A huge crowd had drawn together. And being a little curious, I went down to see what was going on. Jesus was there asking John to baptize him. And John was refusing, but Jesus insisted. When John finally relented and baptized Jesus, had finished, I swear to you, the heaven opened up and the Holy Spirit swooped down on Jesus in the form of a dove. At the end of Jesus' first year of public ministry, he chose me as one of his 12 apostles. We became fast friends, walking together, talking together, and praying together. But now, Jesus is saying, one of us will betray him. Not possible. It'd have to be some crazy person, not one of our group, but he seems so sure. And I have to wonder, could I be the one?
My name is Matthew. Some people call me Levi. Other people call me that darn tax collector like Zacchaeus. But you might actually know me by a different name because I changed both my name and my life when I became friends with Jesus. You know, it was just a ordinary, boring day at the office collecting taxes when all of a sudden Jesus burst in and exclaimed, "Follow me." And then he ran out. I was so shocked because it was so different than my ordinary life that I had to just go and follow him. And I found Jesus so interesting that I invited him and his disciples to come to one of my dinner parties that I was having that evening for some of my coworkers and business partners. But then the Pharisees showed up. I was so embarrassed and horrified when they started criticizing Jesus for eating with sinners such as me. Yet Jesus stood up for me. And he told the Pharisees, those that are healthy don't need a doctor, but those that are sick do. I was impressed. And I realized this was the kind of life that I wanted to live, the type of person I wanted to be. So I started to do some studying. I studied Scripture and listened to Jesus' sermons. And eventually, I repented and I became a follower. I know now that he is the Messiah, God's anointed, the one that the prophets told of. And I plan on writing a book to prove it, using some sacred writings and some notes from Jesus' sermon on the mountain in Galilee. And I was so excited, so ready to share this new gospel, this good news for all people to the world. But now Jesus has just shared this bad news with us, that one of us will betray him. I feel as though my whole past is coming back to haunt me. I wonder if the other disciples suspect me because I used to be a tax collector. And worse yet, I question whether I can even trust myself. And I have to wonder, am I the one?
My name is Nathaniel, but friends call me Bartholomew. Like many of the other disciples, I too am a fisherman. I too am a fisherman. I met Jesus. I can remember when I met Jesus, we were doing some very exciting things as disciples of John the Baptist. My friend Philip came to me one day and he said, "We have found the man who Moses and the prophets said is Jesus of Nazareth, the son of Joseph." I'm sorry. I can't help but laugh. Can anything good really come out of Nazareth? I don't mean to be mean. I don't mean to be unkind. But we're talking about Nazareth. You see, Nazareth is such a small town, and it's so insignificant that I just can't believe that God would call his chosen one out of such a place. Thankfully, Philip was patient with me, and he said, "Come and see." So I had to go with him. As we were approaching Jesus, Jesus turned and looked at us, and he said to me, "Now that looks like a guy that couldn't tell a lie to save his soul." Many of the others were amused. I was not. I was confused, and I was troubled. "How do you know me?" I asked. Jesus said, "Long before Philip called you, when you were under the fig tree, I saw you." You see, when I was just a little baby, my mom placed me under the shade of the fig trees as she went out to work in the hot in the hot, hot sun. And then I just had this moment. You know when something is true and it burns in you? Well, I felt that way. I just knew this man was the real deal. And I told him so. I said, "You are the Son of God, King of Israel." I've served him as a disciple and a chosen apostle ever since. And yet tonight, in the middle of this very, very special supper, he says to us all, "One of you will absolutely betray me." How can that be? We've been through so much together. How could one of us, one of his closest friends, possibly be a traitor? And in that moment, I had this sinking feeling right in the pit of my stomach. I had to ask myself, can it be me? Am I the one?
Let us stand together. Let us break bread together on our knees. Let us break bread together on our knees. When I fall on my knees with my face to the rising sun, oh Lord, have mercy on me. Let us drink wine together on our knees. Let us drink wine together on our knees. When I fall on my knees with my face to the rising sun, oh Lord, have mercy on me. Let us praise God together on our knees. Let us praise God together on our knees. When I fall on my knees with my face to the rising sun, oh Lord, have mercy on me. You may be seated.
My name is James, and I am one of Jesus' 12 apostles. My brother John and I used to be ordinary fishermen before Jesus found us, mending our nets with our dad Zebedee by the Sea of Galilee almost 3 years ago. I always knew we were destined for more than that. And sure enough, he called us to be one of his disciples, and even one of his hand-picked 12 apostles. Our mother Salome was so proud. But she wanted to be sure that we got the recognition that we deserved. So on our way to Jerusalem last week, we asked him, "Teacher, Grant us to sit on your right and left hand when you come into your kingdom. He said, you don't know what you're asking. He said, can you drink from the cup that I am to drink? Or be baptized with the baptism that I will be baptized? I was a little unsure of what he meant, but answered, of course. He looked at us sadly. He said, I do not have the power to grant you such honors in heaven. The others heard what we had asked him, and they were a little upset. But he soothed them by saying, those who want to be first must be servants of all. And then he demonstrated it before supper tonight by washing our feet. But now I'm really confused. He said that one of us is to betray him. Who could it be? Why would someone do such a thing? But then I have to wonder, is it I? Am I the one?
I'm Andrew, Simon Peter's brother. Everyone calls me Andrew the Bringer because that's what I do best, bring others to Jesus. I'm not very talented, just an ordinary Joe, like any one of you, but I've done my best to serve my Lord Jesus with what little gifts I do have. I'm actually the one who brought my brother Peter to serve Jesus, and it's been amazing to see how much he's been transformed by Jesus. I'm sure you've all heard of the crowd of 5,000, right? I'm the one who found the little boy with the original 5 loaves and 2 fish. Just the other day, some Greeks came seeking an audience with my Lord, and I was called in to help them see the light. It's not much, but Jesus saw something good in me that not many others did, because he picked me to be one of his 12 disciples, and we've been very close ever since. Now, I'm not in the inner circle like my brother Peter, but I've been a good friend and companion to my Lord, and truly, what better gift could life offer a fisherman like me? And now one of us is to betray him? It's impossible. Who could do such a thing? How could someone even think of such a thing and live it themselves? I could never do that. Could I? Is it I? Am I the one?
I am Thomas, the twin. Some people call me Didymus, which means, go figure, twin. But I'm not really a half glass, half empty kind of guy. I need proof of what I believe in. Just some evidence before I jump on the bandwagon, so to speak. I'm not completely a stickler. There are times when I can be brave and spontaneous, like the time Mary and Martha sent news of the death of their brother Lazarus to Jesus. Jesus wanted to go to him, but some of our friends were afraid to go to Bethany because they knew how unpopular Jesus was there. Well, they were afraid, but Jesus was determined. And I backed him up. I said, let us go with him, even if it means we die with him. It drives me nuts that people don't remember those times. They remember the times when I was more cautious and doubtful. They want to talk about times when I asked just a few more questions rather than just going with the flow. They don't want to talk about the times when I was really faithful and courageous. I may have just been a fisherman with them at the beginning, but I remember when Jesus shared the Beatitudes with us on the Horns of Hattin in the first year of his ministry. I can literally see him chewing out the wind on the stormy Galilee, healing the sick, curing the diseased, helping the blind see and the deaf hear, healing the lepers, and sharing the gospel with the poor. It's just, there are so many people out there that are enemies of Jesus now, and they're determined to destroy him. He's trying to make us God's servants, and they're trying to make God serve them. And now, even among this group, Jesus' chosen apostles, there's a traitor. A traitor? Seeing enemies all around us, I'm starting to doubt even myself. Is it me? Am I the one?
Foolish, arrogant, and weak. The Galileans. All the others came from Galilee. My home is in the village of Kerioth in Judea. So I am known as Judas of Kerioth or Judas Iscariot, the only Judean in the group. The others must have had confidence in me because they elected me their treasurer. And Jesus must have believed in me because he chose me to be one of the 12. Now, despite what some say behind my back about my stinginess, ambition, and greed, I've followed Jesus, I've walked with Jesus, I've trusted Jesus, I've believed in him, I've dedicated my life to him. Yet some still say that Jesus' words about the love of money and greed were directed specifically at me. Of course I complained when Mary washed his feet with that expensive ointment and perfume. I still think that was a waste of money. And if I have conspired with the chief priests, and if I do have 30 pieces of silver on my person, that's my business. I believe in Jesus. I do. But somebody's got to make him do something. Do something. Someone has to force the issue and make him assert himself as God's Messiah. He refuses to make such a move. Well, I've made one. Now, here's the thing. Jesus hints that he knows what I've done. He said so a few moments ago when he washed our feet and when we dipped our bread in the same dish. I have my reasons for what I've done. My soul isn't as black as some think it is, nor is your soul as white. What would you do if you were in my place and you wanted Jesus to do something dramatic and startling to usher in his kingdom? What would you do? What would you do? And if you were in his place, what would you do? And there's something more. Should I ignore his remark? Or, like the Galileans, should I piously and self-righteously ask myself, is it me? Am I the one?
I am Thaddeus. I know you've probably never heard of me, but you've probably heard my other name, Jude. I am one of the 12 disciples Jesus picked to be one of his personal apostles. Even to this day, I can't fully wrap my head around it. Just as there were 12 tribes that made up the old kingdom, so too were we 12 selected to be the foundation of Jesus' new kingdom here on earth. If I'm being completely honest with you, that's an honor I definitely feel I don't deserve. But that didn't stop Jesus from bestowing it upon us, upon me. He also bestowed upon us authority over demons, the power through our faith to cleanse the sick and cure the diseased. We were given our mission to spread his word throughout the world. But we were also told of the many dangers and adversities we'd have to overcome. We were advised that we would have to be as cunning and crafty as a serpent, yet as innocent as a dove. For we were but a pack of sheep being thrown to a pack of hungry, rabid wolves. Jesus spoke like that all the time. Like just when we got into Jerusalem, he said, "All of you who are tired and stressed, come with me, for my yoke is easy and my burden is light." And I still think and still shudder at how true those words are. And yet now, it seems as though Jesus is under a much heavier burden, a burden that seems to hold the weight of the entire world. Not helped by the fact that apparently one of us, one of his closest friends, is going to betray him. As impossible as it is for me to believe that, I can't help but wonder. Is it one of the people I suspect the most? Someone like Matthew, the former tax collector? Or Simon, the former soldier? And then my mind thinks, what if it's someone I would never suspect? Like Jesus' closest friend Peter, or Judas, or even me. Is it I? Am I the one?
Hello. My name is Philip. I'm from Bethsaida in Galilee. I remember when I first met Jesus, my friends and I were listening to John the Baptist speak when Jesus came and called us to become his disciples. It was so good to be with Jesus when he fed the 5,000 with just 5 loaves and 2 fish. I was actually really worried and asking Jesus and the others about where we were going to get enough food for everyone when Andrew brought a young boy with his lunch to Jesus. Andrew's really good about that kind of thing. The other day, these Greeks came to me asking for an interview with Jesus, and I wasn't sure what to do. So I talked to Andrew first before we introduced them to Jesus. At first, I had a hard time understanding what Jesus was saying. He told us things like God was our Heavenly Father, and it just seemed way beyond my understanding. But now, having listened to him for a long time, I think I understand. It seems to me that anyone who has met Jesus has pretty much met the Father. Because in Jesus, I see everything I would want and expect to see in the Father. There's absolutely nothing about Jesus I wouldn't want to find in the Father. But if that's true, how can there be a traitor in our group like Jesus says? Doesn't he know that by betraying Jesus, he's also betraying God? Could anyone be that blind? Could I? Am I the one?
After Jesus called Peter and Andrew to follow him, he approached me, John, and my brother James, as we were in our boat mending our nets, along with our father Zebedee. And he asked us to follow him. At that moment, we dropped everything. We left our boat, we left our father, and we followed him. That sounds crazy. But I'll tell you what, it's been both the easiest and the hardest thing I have ever done. And you know, watching him preach, watching him perform miracles, I believe he is God more than anyone could ever be. And yet, seeing him struggle and celebrating the victories, man, I love him, and I know he loves me. He often calls me the beloved disciple. Remember, I was there on the Mount of Transfiguration, celebrating the glory, and he asked Peter and I to prepare the Passover meal that you see here tonight because he trusts us. We're his closest friends. And I'll never forget those beautiful words he spoke to Nicodemus when he said, "For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believes in him shall not perish, but have everlasting life." Someday I'm going to write a book. I'm going to incorporate all of his sayings, all of his teachings, and all of his stories. I'm going to make it available for everybody to read so that they can see that he is the Christ, the Son of God. But he just mentioned that we have a betrayer in our group. Surely it's not Peter or Andrew or James. Does he think it's me? Am I the one?
I am Simon, the Zealot, also known as Simon Zelotos. Before Jesus called me, I belonged to a group of bloodthirsty revolutionaries known as the Zealots. The Zealots were for armed revolution against Rome. We believed in crushing our enemies and bringing back the paradise that was Israel in the days of David and Solomon. Yet Jesus taught us of a different paradise, the human heart, where only God reigns supreme. He has shown me that the battle for the heart is the only true and lasting conquest. Since learning this, I have changed my mind and my allegiance. I no longer belong to the Zealots. I have given him my complete loyalty and devotion. Militarily speaking, I have surrendered myself to him unconditionally. As I said, I've changed. I vow to think his thoughts, to love as he loves and whom he loves, to serve as he serves, and obey as he obeys. This surrender has not imprisoned me. Rather, it has set me free for the first time in my life. I am no longer afraid of Rome. Rome may be mighty, but God is almighty. And now, the Master says that there's a spiritual Roman among us, one who would attempt to take by force what can only be won with love, Who can it be? Matthew, the tax collector and former servant of Rome? Or does everyone here suspect me, since I'm the only one among us with a history of violence? Is it me? Am I the one?
My name is Peter, formerly known as Simon, and this is my story of how I came to be with Jesus. My brother Andrew and I were fishing on the Sea of Galilee one afternoon, just casting our nets out for a catch, when Jesus walked by and said, "Follow me, and I will make you fishers of men." So we left everything and followed him. Then one morning, after a long night working with nothing to show for it, he said to me, "Simon, take the boat further out and throw out your nets for a catch." I admit, I was pretty skeptical, exhausted, and a little cranky at that point. But I told him, "Master, we have been working all night and have caught nothing. But if you say so, we will let down the nets." As soon as we did as he said, we had fish swimming like crazy into our nets. We actually caught so many fish, we had to call other boats that were nearby to come help us bring them all back to shore. I was shocked and so disappointed in myself for distrusting him. As soon as we reached the shore, I fell on my knees at his feet and apologized, saying, "Leave me, O Lord, for I am a sinner." He just smiled and said again that he would make us fishers of men. It was then that he changed my name from Simon to Peter, which means the rock. And when we were near Caesarea Philippi, I finally surrendered completely and announced that he was the Christ, the Son of the living God. He said, "On this rock I will build my church." I finally felt like someone important. I was afraid to give that up. So when he mentioned a few minutes later that he would be going up to Jerusalem to die at the hands of evil men, I argued with him. I'll never forget his next words. "Get behind me, Satan. It seems like I'm a mixture of good and evil, of right and wrong." Tonight, when he said that one of us would betray him, I immediately swore that it wouldn't be me, that I would follow him, even to death. He just shook his head at me and looked at me sadly and said that before the sun came up, I will have denied him 3 times. I know the others call me the big fisherman, but with Jesus, I just feel so small and unworthy. Will I really deny him tonight, before the sun rises? And if I do, what will he do? Will he kick me out of the group? Pretend he doesn't know me? Refuse to let me into his kingdom? Is this what he meant when he said one of us would betray him? If I knew who it would be, I would pierce his heart with this knife right here, right now. But what if that meant I'd be piercing my own heart? Oh God, please don't let it be me. It hurts me to wonder, am I the one?
Judas, what you go to do quickly. Thank you. This is my body, broken and given for you. Every time you eat this, do so in remembrance of me. Thank you. This is my blood, poured out for you and for many for the forgiveness of sins. Every time you drink of it, remember me. The meal has been prepared, and you're invited. All of you are invited to receive the gift of love and acceptance and forgiveness only God is able to give. Everything has been made ready. Come and receive.